TeenSpeak, empowering today's youth. TeenSpeak explores the unique strategies and stories of amazing young people from around the globe who are pushing boundaries, overcoming adversity, and achieving greatness. The guests share their personal stories of success, resilience, and courage with an infectious dose of inspiration to help encourage our listeners to create the life they desire. Your hosts, Senzer and Antwaun Thompson, are youth empowerment and leadership coaches that have dedicated themselves to helping teens find their true north by educating, supporting, and inspiring them.
Welcome to TeenSpeak, empowering today's youth. I am Coach T, or Antwaun Thompson, in North Carolina, and I'm joined by my good friend and co-host,
Coach Senzer from New York, living in Virginia right now. Till the end of June. Hopefully I'm home by the end of June.
Yeah, living out of your suitcase, right?
Living out of my suitcase on a couch in a one-bedroom apartment with my daughter. So I'm sure my daughter's really happy that her dad's her roommate for the last 7 months. Actually, July. It's been July. So but we do what we got to do for our kids. So
yeah, that we do. So we are youth empowerment coaches, and our mission is really to have a platform for young people to come on and talk about challenges that they've had, but more importantly, the strategies that they've used to overcome those. And in the interim of us having guests, Keith and I are coming on and talk about things that we think are important, provide some tips, some insight to not only help preteens and teens, but also to help parents and families, as well as educators. And Keith, I don't know if you want to add a couple of things before we get started.
yeah, well, I think it's important to talk about how social media, I mean, look, it's like anything, right? Everything, like even AI, right? There's benefits to everything, but it's all how you use it, right? And it's like, what do they say? With great power comes great responsibility, right? When you're given something, if you use it responsibly, it has tremendous benefits. But unfortunately, it always comes with a downside. And if you don't know how to manage that downside, there's a lot of negatives. And I mean, we could talk about it a little bit, but I mean, I do a ton of work on executive functioning. And I mean, the amount of students who struggle, whose executive function skills are declining because of technology. Like these are kids that might not necessarily have executive functioning deficits, but they end up developing executive functioning deficits because of social media, procrastination and distraction and things like that, right? Typically, when we hear executive functioning, we think of kids with ADHD, more the neurodivergent community. But the truth is, social media has made it something that many, many students struggle with, regardless of whether they're neurotypical or neurodivergent.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. One of the things I think about, Keith, is as a basketball coach, I'll use an analogy, and I think it kind of ties into what we're talking about. To work with a kid, and we want to get better at, let's just say, shooting. Okay, so we get on the doctor dish and we put up 300 shots a session. Well, we're being consistent with our efforts, right? So that means we're going to gradually improve. Well, if we stop doing that and the kid just keeps watching videos on how to shoot better, which result do you think it's going to end up being better? Actually doing it, or sitting and watching or reading about improving your shooting? And we both know the answer to that. And I think that's a good way of putting together what the impact of social media is having for kids when they're trying to learn. It's easy to go to the internet and get something, read it, but if you don't apply it, you're not really retaining anything.
Well, I think actually it's great that you brought that up, because what that actually helps me think about as well is like the power of intention, setting intentions, right? Like if you're going to go on social media, I'll give a perfect example. My son is very handy, which is interesting because I'm not handy at all, right? But if he needs to learn something, like even as a drummer, this, right? Like he wanted to set up mics because he's recording an album. And, he's like, I have no idea how to do this. And he went on YouTube, but his intention, he set the intention. I'm going to learn how to set up these mics. So he watched the videos, but then he went and bought the mics and did what he had to do. He didn't just be like, I'm just going to doom scroll all day on setting up mics. And like he had the intention, I'm going online to learn this so I can apply it. And he set the intention in his head to do it, and he did it. And he learns a lot from things online. There's so much you can learn online if you actually want to learn it and apply it, like you said. But there's also, I'm gonna do this, and then it's like, well, I'm just going to look at this. Well, maybe this guy does it, and it just goes on and on and on, right? Your intention's not really there. It's like you're saying you want to do it, but you're not really ready to do it because you're just kind of exploring. You have to go in there and be like, I need to find this, I need to get what I need, and I need to take it and put it to use. And that's a big thing. I think setting intentions is huge. I mean, adults and teens, right? It's so important for us to say, not only is this something we want to do, I'm going to do it. This is when I'm going to do it. Like, it's just that whole mindset shift is everything between following through on something, or it's just a nebulous idea in your head that you keep saying, I know I keep saying I want to do this, but I never do it. Well, you don't do it because you don't have the intention to do
Right. And I think that that's the other thing about setting goal. I think that ties into setting goals too. If you really want to, like you just described about Brett with the mics and his drums, he has a plan. There's a goal. There's an end goal there. And I think a lot of kids, I wouldn't say they're losing it. It's hard to get through to them that we're trying to plant seeds for them, and we're providing them the tools to improve, but also to empower them to take ownership of what's being taught. And I think that's one of the challenges that teachers are dealing with, is kids taking ownership of what's being provided for them from an education standpoint.
it. Yeah. I think too, the other piece of it is, you hear a lot of kids these days talking about, I don't understand why I need this, and I don't understand why I have to know calculus. I'm torn a little bit on that conversation, right? Because part of me feels like, if I don't want to be a programmer. I don't want to do coding. I don't want, I want to go into business. So it's more important to understand like finance and math and parts of math, right? And history, right? Like, I think everybody needs to know what they need to know. But I do agree. Like, I remember as a student, like, struggling with calculus and trig. Like, I failed. Like, and I'm like, why? Like, I'm never going to use these skills ever, right? And for me, if you would have put me in a law class or business class or something else, I think I would have benefited better from that. So, but at the same time, I understand it's so important to teach basic, to teach arithmetic and certain, but I think at one point when you get to the upper grades, I think we're too focused on, you must take this. I think when you get to like 11th grade, 12th grade, even 10th grade, if you've done bio and you've done chemistry, do you need physics? I don't know. Physics are for people that really want to be doctors, scientists, be in that world, right? But if you have no desire, you're probably never going to use physics in your life, right? So yeah. I'm always torn with that conversation, because part of me believes you need to teach it, but then there's this part of me that's like, we need to be teaching what they want to learn. And the truth is, a lot of schools, there's become a lot of these non-state schools that are starting to become very busy because they're experiential and they're teaching a very different way. And you're still getting your social studies and your English and your math, but they're coming to the students level and teaching them where they need to be taught, as opposed to just this, hey, here's the framework and everybody has to fit into this framework. So, again, not 100% sold on it, but I definitely teeter-totter on both sides, because I can see the value in both. And I think we need to find a way to kind of center that more, because I think it would benefit our country and the students that we're putting out there. And if you look at some other countries out there, their education systems are far above ours, because they are focused on the student, not on the framework. That makes sense.
Yeah. No, it definitely makes sense. But I think you make a great point too, is, when you get to a certain grade, and I think 10th grade is a great level, because you've had a lot of the basics of what the aforementioned history and social studies and the basic math. And you get to that point where it's like, okay, it has a good sense of what they're interested in, I think, at that age, based on what they're being taught. And then they can decide if they're elective to things that they can follow through of what they're interested in. And then if they decide to go to a trade school or to go to college to kind of continue the area of interest to them, now you put them in a position of control, but you've also provided them the basics and the groundwork and the foundation to build on. Now it's up to them. And of course, you still provide them the guidance, obviously from an educational standpoint and experience and things of that nature, but you put some ownership and some responsibility on them. And I think that's the bigger word, is responsibility. But I know you probably dealt with some kids where, kids don't feel as though they're given opportunities to be responsible for really important aspects of their lives at a young age. Not that you got to hand over the keys to the Ferrari or anything, but you have to give them a little bit of leeway so that they can learn. It's experience. That's how we learn. I mean, you've seen all the memes and the videos about, oh, you'll love this one. This is a perfect one. There was a TikTok and a picture of somebody on a bike. So probably back in the 80s. And the caption said, I fell off my bike and broke my arm, but there was no internet, so I'm letting you know about it now.
Yes. That's great. That's great. Yeah. I mean, those. It's the truth is, like, like I work with a lot of college students, right? And you know, if they're a economics major, right? They're getting A's in macroeconomics and microeconomics because they love it. It's what they want to learn. But then they're told they have to take a foreign language or they have to take a science class. And they're struggling in biology or chemistry or whatever, because it's like, I want to learn this. Like, why do I need this? I want to be a business person, right? So like I understand that, but I think the truth is, right? I think that's with anybody, even as adults, right? Like if we enjoy what we're learning, we're gonna be engaged, right? If we don't enjoy what we're learning, we're gonna disconnect because we're just bored. It doesn't resonate with us. So it's definitely a fine line. And I think to raise a smart, intelligent country, a country with educated people, you need there are certain prerequisites that I agree. You got to teach these things. But I do agree with you at one point, how much more of it do you need? Like if you want to code, you need to know calculus and you need to know algebra and all that, because it's very similar as far as like the way the brain thinks with coding and all that stuff, right? But desire to be in the tech world, and you want to be a business person, or you want to be a psychologist. So much more important to take sociology classes, psychology classes, human interest classes, philosophy class, right? So, you get it in college, but I think if we taught it in high school, we'd have a lot more engaged kids in high school. And I also think we'd have a lot of kids who maybe don't go to college because they struggle so hard in the topics that are just not interesting to them, that they don't feel like they're capable.
Yeah.
Whereas if they were learning what they really want to learn, they'd be like, oh, I could be good at this. And now, you know what? I'm going to take this a step further. So I definitely think we missed the boat sometimes there. But, I get it. It's a big country and we have to have some rules in place, right? But you know how I always feel. Boxes are never good. When you put people in a box, you limit them, and unfortunately, it's the small minority that are able to kind of see that and get out of the box. Everybody else, we just follow along.
Yeah, well, I think the other part, Keith, is ties into your part about the box is, how we're all kind of waking up to certain aspects of society, our lives, and our goals, our missions, and things of that nature. Well, kids are probably doing it sooner than we did. So, to your point, they are already thinking outside of that box that you just described, but they're being confined to that box. And when you hold people back at a certain point, there's a level of frustration, obviously. We've both probably been through things like a lot of people have been through as times in their lives where you want to take that next step, but people are holding you back from taking the step that you're capable of or that you really want. I think that's what you kind of just described a little bit too with students, is that they want to step outside that box and go, hey, I can take what's in the box, but I want to take what I got learn inside the box and take it outside the box so I can grow as a person, as an individual, and follow my dreams and my aspirations.
Yeah, no, 100%. And you know what? Listen, I think you'd said it before. I think like being an educator, it's really hard to be an educator right now because people that go into teaching. I mean, it's that's a job. Like you don't if you went into teaching just for the money, you're in it for the wrong reason, right? But most people that go into education, like they want to make an impact, they want to make a difference, they want to change lives, right? That's why they do it. And it's really hard for them now, especially with like social media, because first of all, and before this call, we were talking about having this conversation, right? About like how kids they're so glued to their phones that they almost get withdrawal, so when they're in the classroom, it's sometimes really hard for an educator. They're so used to the dopamine hits coming from everything they look at. And now they go to school and that educator wants to give them that dopamine hit. They want to teach them. They want to educate them. They want to make them feel good. They want them to learn, right? Like they want to give them information that's going to excite them and make them feel good and learn something new and see things they're so used to the instant gratification instead of seeing the benefit of having an educator actually like walking you through, teaching you, showing you, helping you grow and build your skills, right? Like it makes it really hard for educators, I think, to connect with students these days because they can't provide that same instant gratification that they get on their device.
Yeah. Well, I will throw this out just because that's a great point. So let's play devil's advocate here. So we say we want to we both understand the best way to get through to kids is to get through to them on their level. While we probably both say that a lot, connect with them on their level. Well, take what you just said. What if teachers, using their own way of teaching, their own personalities, adapt to connect? If it's a subtle, it could be subtle, doesn't have to be drastic, but subtle changes to connect with kids so that they are providing that instant dopamine hit, if you will, during that. It doesn't have to be the whole time, but all you got to do is get an eyebrow raise here or there, and
Right.
that's part of that connection.
Well, I mean, I agree with you. Look, I'll never forget this. I had a social studies teacher in, I think it was ninth grade. This guy, like, he would dress up. Like, if we were learning about, Washington crossing the Delaware, he would come dressed up as, like, he made it so interesting and engaging. I think the problem is, again, just like we put kids in the box, we've now put teachers in the box. We've
Right.
told
Yeah.
I mean, you're in education, so you understand, right?
Yeah.
Like, we now, instead of teachers being able to just teach it in a way that's engaging and fun, they're told they have to teach to the test. Now all of a sudden their tenure or their job is dependent on how well their students are doing. So the minute you do that, right, it takes away from their ability to be creative and to bring something to the classroom different. It's kind of like, I can't do this. Like, I have to teach this way because I need these students to pass and do well, because if they don't, there's an impact on me. There's an impact on the finances that my district gets. And, like, it's just, we've taken away, we've almost turned education into like a machine, right?
Yeah.
So, and listen, I have tons of friends who are educators. My wife's a principal, right? Like, it's really hard being a teacher now because they don't have the autonomy they used to have. Like, you cannot, like, I don't know many teachers that can do that now. That can come in and teach like that. Like, you have
Right.
to teach to the test. You have to teach this curriculum exactly this way. Like, it's just, there's a lot of, and look, I'm not an educator, so maybe I'm not 100% on point here, but I think I'm very close to being on point with that, because the teachers I talk to and my friends who are teachers, they say the same thing. They're like, it's crazy. Like, this is what I have to do. Like, I want to do this, but I have to do this because if I don't do this, I'll get in trouble. And that's just
Right.
such a horrible state of our
Yeah.
education system to have to be like that. So
Yeah. No, that's a really good point, because they could be restricted by how free they can be in their lectures and or their classes. But like I said, just us trying to kind of help the process, both from
yeah,
the student's perspective as well as the educator's perspective. And I think you're right. The higher ups, kind of make those determinations. And yes, there are probably pressures that the kids be successful from the learning and testing perspective. But ultimately, we want what's best for everybody, all involved. We want teachers to be excited about what they do. And you make a valid point. A really good teacher doesn't go into it for the money. And we
right.
know that they're doing it for the sole purpose of trying to make a difference and improving the lives of students and giving them an opportunity to excel outside of the classroom. So it's an argument. It'd be great. Maybe on my development tomorrow's league, I may start a little series, get some teachers that are willing to come on and
Yeah.
talk about it. But that's some I've actually tried to do that, and some are hesitant, obviously, for obvious reasons, but some are, maybe former teachers might be better ones to bring on, because you can get a true perspective of why some are leaving, because they feel confined and not able to really connect, or it's really become too frustrating for them, and they know that they don't feel as though they're making the difference that they went into it to do.
Well, I think, what, that brings up a good point too. I think the administration has a lot to do with it, right? Because, I don't, what I'm saying, I don't want this to sound like a blanket statement. There's plenty of educators out there who are creative and different, but they have an administration behind them that allows them to do that, allows them to be that way. You know what I mean? I think that, unfortunately, that's not everywhere. I see it with the work I do, right? Like, going in and trying to bring my social emotional programming to school districts. You'll have some districts where it's like, you know what, we love this. This is different. This is good. We want to talk to you. And then when we have some where they're like, well, we're just going to bring a speaker in. Yeah, because it checks off a box. You bring in I mean, not that speakers aren't beneficial, but they bring in a speaker in because it gets to check off the mental health box, but they're not really engaged. Because if you're engaged, bringing a speaker in is wonderful, but you need to do more than just bring a speaker in. You need to be providing the program. So I think there's administration that are like, I want my teachers to have that autonomy. And we're going to do what we need to do to teach to the test, but we're going to find other ways to do that. But I'm going to give them the ability to be creative. And, and you see it all the time. There's always like awards for like teacher of the year for this district, that, because they do stand out. So, it's not that it's impossible, but listen, when you got a family to feed and that's your job, and you have to make sure that your students are doing at a certain level, because it's on you. If you don't, you can do whatever you have to do to make that happen, because you've got to take care of you and your family, right? So that it's a very muddy water there, I think, right? I think education in general, I mean, it's very what's going on right now. We don't might not have a Department of Education, right? Or what's going to happen with how's that going to affect IEPs and 504s? You know, I don't want to get into a conversation about that, but my point is education is a very broad field. And I think you come across administrations and educators all over the place with very different viewpoints and very different ways of doing things. And as a result, the classrooms are going to be what they are based on the culture of that particular school or district or administration and people that work there. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, it does. And that reminded me, and I think we'll kind of end it on this because, like I said, we can keep going. So I came across another TikTok. It was a teacher, and she was talking about that she had just been let go because of some changes, I guess, within the school system, whatever. The last thing she said, and it was a question. She goes, "How can you terminate the teacher of the year?" So she was just nominated teacher of the year before, and here she is now out of a job. So that's just another dynamic to your point about the politics associated with education, and it makes it frustrating. I'm sure somebody else is probably in that same situation, going, "Well, heck, am I safe?" And you were talking earlier about tenure, and it's like, well, good Lord, that means nothing. With the state of where we are with education. So that was kind of baffling for me. And it just really made me wonder, where is the education system going, to your point?
But also, what's the reason, right? I mean, like, that's the other thing, right? There's a curriculum, right? So when you educate, you're supposed to educate on the curriculum. And, I think we see this more in higher education, right? We have people educating, they're trying to influence students as opposed to just teaching. And like, really
Right.
teach the material, teach what you want to teach. It's okay to have open dialogue and open conversation, but like, as an educator, I personally believe, right? And I'm not an educator, but I'm saying if I was an educator, right? And I know my wife feels the same way, you educate and you let them use their own critical thinking skills to decide what's what and how they want to, right? But for us to go in there and say, no, you really should believe this because this is not right, that's not really educating. So that, I think that's what's caused a lot of problems. And I think we're seeing a lot of that in a lot of places now. But like I said, I have so many. To me, being an educator is God's work, and I'm not like a super religious person, but it is. And you know, we need to allow educators to educate to who they are, to the way they need to be, because as long as the kids are getting the information and receiving the information and retaining the information, they're going to do okay on exams. Not every kid's going to do great, and if we're teaching to a test because it's what we're told to do, but they're not really retaining it because they're not really interested, they're just memorizing stuff. Are they really learning it? So can have this conversation all day long, but I do think what you initially mentioned, like social media, plays a big piece in this. I saw a great article the other day. There was a young boy, I think he was 13. He started something at his school. He turned in his smartphone for a flip phone because he lost his phone and he was without his phone for a week. And his parents were like, we're not buying, like you need to give it a week to find it. And he realized a week without his phone, how free he felt. And he was like, I'm never getting a smartphone again. And he bought a flip phone and he started something in his school for all the kids that start getting flip phones. And there's a bunch of kids now in that district. Got to look it up. I forgot where it was, that are using flip phones because the sense of freedom they have by
Yeah.
not being tied to a smartphone. Like, he did not realize it. He was like, my homework's getting done quicker. I'm studying harder. I'm doing much better in school. Like, he literally, he had to lose his phone to realize just how important, what an impact it was having on him. So,
That's awesome.
it was
Yeah, that is
pretty cool
great.
story.
Yeah, that's a great story, man. And the fact that you say 13?
Yeah, I think he was like 13.
Wow.
13 or 14.
Yeah.
Yeah, he lost his phone, and his parents like, well, you're not getting a phone for at least a week. You need to look for it. And a week of no social media, no being able to go online, and I mean, you can go on your computer, but it's not the same thing. No texting, no responding, no worry. I can't respond to my friends, so I have no choice, right? He realized how much time he had back and how much freedom he had, and
Yeah.
it was liberating for him. And I'm like, it's so true. I mean, like when I go on vacation, I try to shut down. I try to turn off my phone. I'm like, I'm off the grid. Do not bother me. Like I am away. I'm spending time with my wife and my kids, and I don't want to be bothered. And you know, it's huge. It really is.
Yeah. I think adults need to try that, man. I'm like, geez. Hey, so you'll love
Everybody's.
this for yeah, we should. So you know what I had every BlackBerry that ever came out. So my last one, which I think is the Torch, I believe, it is now my alarm clock. I didn't get rid of it, but it's all the apps and everything are on it. But yeah, that's a great story. But it's a great reminder that how much it dominates. That question: do you use your phone or does your phone use you? And you just
Yeah.
gave me the perfect example that our phones dominate our lives, and it's unfortunate. And that's adults too. I mean, we all
Yeah.
realize it, but it's just become part of our everyday norm, unfortunately,
If you have an
in some
iPhone or
areas.
a Samsung, you have it built in. You can see your usage. You can just pull up a report. It'll tell me how many hours you're on your phone. Just because we're talking about this, I definitely think a great conversation down the road would be like just the dangers and the power of social media, because I do think there's these, I remember when 9/11 happened, right? I remember where I was. I was in Manhattan at the time. I was actually working in the city. And my daughter came home from school. My son was just born, but he was a baby. So she was like 4. And the only way she would have known about it was the newspaper. She didn't have the internet, she didn't have a cell phone, there was no social media, and you know, we were able to shield her from, you know, that. Because imagine a kid at 4 years old reading that. That's scary, right? Oh my God, this happened. They're gonna come after me next, right? Like now they have access to everything. They are so inundated with information that it's so hard to process it. And then it they don't know what's right, what's wrong, and they actually almost lose that critical thinking. We should definitely have a conversation about that, because I think it's so important to um, make sure that just because you see something, doesn't mean it's true. You got to
Yeah,
research it, and you got
right.
to really. But what I was going to say is, just for any parents listening, especially your kids, um, there's a great app called the Freedom app. And what it is you can go on your computer, your phone, you can you can block websites, apps, whatever you want from being open. So, and you can set it for times. Like if I'm going to do homework between 4 and 7, you can block everything. And if you try to go online or you try to go somewhere else, it's going to redirect you back to what you were doing. Like you can literally customize this app to block out time frames. So if you're tempted to go on YouTube or this or that, it will not allow you to do it. Like you'd have to go in and
Wow.
change it. And the way the brain works for most people is like, if you have to change something, you got to go 2 or 3 steps to get there. You're probably not going to do it.
Right.
So they don't make it easy. Like you have to log in, then you have to go here. But it's a phenomenal, phenomenal app, because it has everything. It covers, and it even has things built in. Like it actually has like LinkedIn, Facebook's already on there. You just click it off if you want it, and it keeps you Instagram, whatever, Snapchat. It keeps you from accessing those things on your phone, on your website, on your computer for the time period that you designate you don't want to. So if you really are determined to be focused during certain periods of time, you can absolutely create the space you need to create without distractions. And I find that kids I work with that use that, it's like game changing for them. So if anybody's listening to any teens or any parents, it's a great app. And I think it's like $8 a month. It's worth every penny if you struggle to stay focused because you're constantly getting distracted. And unfortunately, that's what social media does with all the pop-ups and everything. It literally cuts it out.
That's a great. I didn't hear that. That
Yeah,
is awesome.
it's really cool.
It's called Freedom.
Freedom
Freedom
app.
app.
Called the Freedom app.
Freedom
Yep.
app. Okay.
Really,
All
really
right. I'm
cool.
gonna get. Yeah. All right. My wife probably get that from me and cut me out every day. That's
Uh,
okay.
and while we're on it, if you're an educator listening, just you should know me and Antoine have nothing but respect for the educators in this
Absolutely.
country, because we know what it's like. And I've had good educators, and I've had some really bad ones that shaped a lot about my my self-worth. I can tell that story another time, but
Yeah.
it's really hard now to be a teacher, and they're overworked, and there's a lot that they need to do and a lot of parameters, and so if you're out there doing it, you're doing good work, and
Yeah.
please continue to do it because we need you out there doing it.
Yes, we do. And I echo your sentiments 100%. And like you said, it's a tough job to do, but it's an important job. And for those that are sticking it out and doing the best they can, and we applaud you and we support you 100%, and keep doing what you're doing because it is making a difference and it does not go unappreciated. So,
and if you want to come on this show and talk about the impact that has with teens, and let us know. We'd love to have you on because, it's great for me and Antoine to talk about it, but it's always better coming directly from the horse's mouth, right? So,
oh yeah, 100%, no doubt about that. We do really appreciate you tuning in, and if you have a preteen or teen that'd like to be a guest on this podcast, TeenSpeak, Empowering Today's Youth, Keith and I both have a form on our website. His is shiftyourpower.com, and mine is CoachTsCorner.com. Fill out that form, hit submit, and we'll get it and have you on. And I know Keith and I are working on getting a couple people on here pretty soon. And I got a couple, by the way, that I've reached out to, and they're interested. And I just got to follow through and get them on here. So any parting words from you, my friend?
No, I think I love what we're doing this. And like I said, it's just so important to teach your kids, and if your team's listening, right, we'll talk about this another time, but you got to just go out there and do what your mind and your heart are telling you to do, and speak your mind too, right? Like it's okay to disagree. It's okay to voice your opinion. Nobody should silence you, but at the same time, make sure that opinion is coming from a unopinionated place and coming from a place of education and critical thinking. So whatever it is you're saying, you truly have something to back up your views and your thoughts, because I think that's really important as you get older, and you're going to learn it as middle school, and as you get through, you're going to see how it impacts you. And the earlier you can learn critical thinking skills, the better off you're going to be in the world, because people are going to listen to you.
Great finish. He is Coach Keith Senzer. He helps kids find their true north, and I'm Coach T. I help educate, support, and inspire the next generation of leaders. And until our next episode, we look forward to seeing you and you hearing us.
Bye.
Are you looking for an experienced youth empowerment and leadership coach to help your teenager find their true north? Look no further. Let Coach Keith and Coach T show you how, through education, support, and inspiration. Visit their websites, shiftyourpower.com and CoachTsCorner.com, respectively, to learn more about the services they offer and to book a session today.